Hello, this is Colin. Well, we left tea with the Ming. Now, the Ming period in China is when tea really took off amongst the common people. The institution of the tea house was invented at the time, and the tea house became a gathering place of all kinds of people, all in all ranks of society. Now, typically, the tea house only served tea, and it could be any time of day. There was no, tea time. And eventually, the popularity of tea grew to so much that it was served breakfast and lunch and dinner any time of day. One would have your tea. Now, it was also during the Ming that the exportation of tea really took off. Now, earlier, by the 9th century, tea was being exported in great numbers to Tibet on the back of yaks. From there, it went on to some parts of India and Nepal and Bhutan, but it became very popular with the Tibetans who used yak's butter with their tea. Now, of course, neighboring Korea had been using tea in rituals since I think like the 7th century. I think it was. Yes, the 7th century. There's a record of tea being sacrificed to the spirit of what's his name, King Soro, who was the founder of the Gumangwan Gaya dynasty kingdom in Korea. Now, the problem with Korea, of course, is that most of it is mountainous and relatively cold, so it's a difficult place to grow tea. And tea was harvested in the late winter, early spring period in the mountains when it was still cold. In fact, an early word for tea in Korean actually refers to the snow-covered fields that the tea trees were harvested in. And besides being cold, there's also the danger from wildlife. Korea was famous for its tigers, for example. So tea was difficult for them to produce, and also the government taxed tea to such an extent that the farmers simply eventually just destroyed their tea fields and switched to cereal crops, so that by the time the Ming came to the aid of the Koreans against the Japanese invasion of the late 16th century, the Ming discovered that the Koreans had actual tea plants, but no desire to manufacture tea in a large basis. I mean, they still use tea for some rituals, but for a while at least, the drinking of tea had waned in Korea. So, of course, it's also about this time. I think the first Portuguese ship showed up in China at about the 15th century. That the Europeans discovered tea, but that is a whole nother story. Anyway, today's tea is a grapefruit Earl Grey, which is a black tea, of course. Oh yes, the black tea was also invented during the Ming, and one of the reasons that black tea became popular is because by fermenting it, it became easier to export. It lasted longer, it retained its flavor and its aroma longer, so black tea actually helped tea spread across the world. So, yeah. Earl Grey grapefruit. Cheers.